The average American who leases cars between 25 and 65 transfers roughly $740,000 from their future net worth to the auto industry. Most of them genuinely believe they're being smart with money. Many of them have read finance books. Several of them work in finance. And almost none of them have ever sat down and run the actual lifetime math on the decision they renew every 3 years on autopilot. You think a lease is a 3-year decision. That's the trap. A lease is a 40-year decision dressed up in a 3-year contract, and the difference between those two framings is the difference between a comfortable retirement and a working retirement. Here's the part that should make you sit up. The people who genuinely understand this don't drive bad cars. They drive nicer cars than most of the people leasing, because they own them outright, paid for years ago and kept. The lease isn't the way to drive a nice car. The lease is the way to never own one. My name is Dax, and on Dax Explains Money, I spend way too much time looking at the financial decisions that look small when you sign the paperwork and look enormous when you finally do the math. Today, I'm going to walk you through why automotive leasing is the single most underestimated, wealth-destroying decision the average upper middle class American makes. The 4 mechanisms that turn a manageable monthly payment into a lifetime fortune, and the specific dollar math behind each one. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the financial industry treats a leased car the same way casinos treat slot machines. Before I get into the mechanisms, I need to give you the metaphor that anchors everything else, and it's a deeply mechanical one, on purpose. Picture a conveyor belt, not a metaphor, a real industrial conveyor belt, the kind that runs in a factory, moves at a steady mechanical pace, never speeds up, never slows down. You step onto the belt starts moving you. As long as you're standing on it, you have to keep paying a small fee to remain on the belt. If you step off, the fee stops. If you stay on, the fee continues forever. Here's the thing about the conveyor belt. While you're standing on it, scenery passes by you. New cars, new years, different models. The view keeps refreshing. So from inside your own experience, it feels like you're going somewhere. You're moving. The view is changing. You must be making progress. You are not making progress. You are renting motion. The person walking on the ground beside the belt, slower, less glamorous, with an older view, is the one actually getting to a destination. They are the one whose feet will arrive somewhere. The person on the belt is, by design, going to step off in exactly the same place they got on, just decades later and with a lot less money. The lease is a conveyor belt. The fee is the monthly payment. The view that keeps refreshing is the new car every 3 years. And the destination you will never arrive at is car ownership. Most people who get on the belt at 25 are still on it at 65. They have driven nice cars for 40 years. They have owned no cars for 40 years. And they have paid, in aggregate, approximately the price of a house for that experience. Now let me walk you through the 4 mechanisms that make this work the way it does, because each one operates differently, and almost no one accounts for all 4 at the same time. I want you to meet someone first, because his story is going to follow us through the rest of this video. His name is Anthony. He's 42 years old, marketing director at a mid-sized agency in Atlanta, earns $155,000 a year, married, 2 kids in elementary school, a tasteful home in a good school district. Anthony has been leasing cars since age 25. His first lease was a $399 a month entry-level sedan, signed 2 months after his first real salaried job. He felt very adult about it. The math made sense. He could afford the payment. The car was reliable. 3 years later, the lease ended, and he returned the car and signed a new one, slightly nicer, $475 a month, because his salary had gone up and the upgrade felt earned. 3 years after that, an SUV, $580. 3 years after that, a luxury crossover, $720. He currently drives a German performance SUV at $760 a month, with another 14 months left on the lease, after which he will, by his own description, see what's out there. Anthony has spent the last 17 years on the belt. He has owned no car during that time. He has, however, paid approximately $108,000 in lease payments to various leasing arms of various manufacturers. He has, additionally, paid roughly $14,000 in mandatory full coverage insurance premiums above what he would have paid on owned vehicles, and approximately $9,500 in disposition fees, excess wear fees, mileage overage fees, and acquisition fees across his various leases. His total automotive expenditure over 17 years, approximately $131,500. His current automotive net worth, zero. He owns a key to a car that does not belong to him. Anthony is not stupid. Anthony is, by every other measure, financially competent. He maxes his 401k. He has a 529 for the kids. He has a small taxable brokerage account. He reads finance content. He listens to podcasts. He just has never, in 17 years, sat down and computed what the conveyor belt has cost him. Let me start with the first mechanism, because it's the one almost nobody runs the math on. The fundamental error in lease math is the comparison set. When most people evaluate a lease, they compare it to either renting nothing and walking, or to buying the same car at the same price tier. The first comparison is impractical for most people. The second comparison is fixed against the actual alternative, which is buying a different car at a lower price tier and keeping it long enough to actually compound the savings. The honest comparison is this. Anthony, leasing at an average of $530 a month over 17 years, has paid $108,000 in pure rental for cars he will never own. The honest alternative was buying a reliable used car for around $18,000 at age 25, keeping it for 10 years, then replacing it with another reliable used car for around $22,000 at age 35, keeping that one for 10 years as well. Total spent on actually owning vehicles in those 17 years, $40,000. The gap, just on the pure car expenditure, is $68,000. That's a $68,000 difference between the two paths over 17 years. Most people see that number and think, well, $68,000 over 17 years is about $4,000 a year, and the lease provided convenience, reliability, no maintenance worries, a nicer car. It feels like a tax on a better experience. That framing is wrong because it ignores what $68,000 does when you don't spend it. If Anthony had invested the monthly difference between leasing and buying, roughly $330 a month on average across his career, at a 7% average annual return, by age 42, he would have accumulated approximately $134,000 in invested wealth attributable to the choice not to lease. That's $134,000 he doesn't have. Right now, in his 42-year-old life. Already gone. Now extend it. Anthony will keep leasing until 65 if he doesn't change anything. 23 more years on the belt at an average monthly payment that will continue to rise as cars get more expensive, almost certainly clearing $1,000 a month by his late 50s on the current trajectory. 23 more years of $400 a month opportunity cost compared to the buying alternative, growing at 7%. By 65, the conveyor belt will have cost Anthony approximately $740,000 in foregone wealth. That's not what he paid in lease payments. That's what he didn't get because he wasn't investing the difference. The lease payments themselves are roughly $400,000 over 40 years. The opportunity cost is the other $340,000. Together, that's $740,000 of net worth difference between Anthony's actual path and the boring alternative most people dismiss as beneath them. For context, $740,000 invested at 65 generates approximately $29,600 a year in passive income under a 4% withdrawal. That's roughly equivalent to Anthony's projected Social Security benefit. He is, in a real and quantifiable sense, paying for the privilege of driving leased cars by giving up the equivalent of his Social Security check every year for the rest of his retirement. That's the first mechanism. The opportunity cost is bigger than the line item. Now the second mechanism, because this is the one that makes the trap self-reinforcing. You think the lifestyle calibration problem ends with the car. It doesn't. The car class you lease silently sets the lifestyle class for everything else around it, and that calibration is much more expensive than the car itself. Here's what I mean. Anthony's German performance SUV doesn't park in his driveway in isolation. It signals a lifestyle. The neighbors look at it. The colleagues look at it. The college friends he sees twice a year look at it. And without anyone saying anything explicitly, a small social calibration begins. He's the guy with that car, so his vacations need to be commensurate. His house needs to look like a guy with that car owns it. His kids' activities need to be at the level a guy with that car would put them in. His clothes, his watch, his haircut, his coffee order, every adjacent signal slowly recalibrates to the car the world sees him drive. This is not Anthony's character flaw. It's how human social calibration works. Decades of behavioral research show that visible status indicators silently move the rest of a person's spending decisions toward consistency. Anthony didn't choose to spend more on landscaping. He just couldn't bring himself to have shabby landscaping in front of a $70,000 SUV. He didn't choose more expensive restaurants. He just couldn't bring himself to take colleagues to a casual chain when the car they walked past on the way there said something different. If Anthony had been driving a 6-year-old paid-off Toyota for those 17 years, the rest of his lifestyle would have calibrated lower in countless small, invisible ways. Not dramatically, but enough that when you add up the cumulative second-order effects of leasing, the way the car class drags every other expense up by 5% to 10%, the real annual cost of leasing is meaningfully higher than the lease payment alone. I'm going to be conservative and say the calibration drag is $200 a month on top of the direct lease cost. Some research suggests it's closer to $400. Either way, over 40 years, compounded at investment opportunity cost, you're looking at another $250,000 to $500,000 of net worth difference that lives downstream of the car decision, but is invisibly caused by it. By the way, if this is landing for you, hit subscribe. The algorithm is the algorithm, and the only way it keeps surfacing videos that point at the actual mechanics of the system is if viewers actively tell it to. Now let me walk into the third mechanism, because this is the one the leasing industry has built its entire marketing around. The number one reason people give for leasing instead of buying is, I don't want to deal with maintenance. It is, almost without exception, the first justification that comes out of someone's mouth when you ask them why they lease. And it sounds reasonable. Lease cars are new. They're under warranty. They never need real repairs. You're not on the hook for transmissions or engines or brake jobs. Here's what's actually happening in that math. The reason a new car has no maintenance costs is that it hasn't depreciated yet. The reason a used car has maintenance costs is because the depreciation has already happened, and someone else has already absorbed it. When you lease a new car, you are not avoiding cost. You are paying for the steepest, most expensive section of the depreciation curve every single month, in exchange for being insulated from a smaller dollar amount of mechanical risk on the back end. Let me put real numbers on this. A new $55,000 SUV loses approximately 20% of its value the moment it's driven off the dealership lot. That's $11,000 of depreciation in the first year alone, on average, between fees, drive-off, and first-year value loss. The same SUV at year 4 is worth approximately $28,000. So in those first 4 years, the car has lost $27,000 in market value. The lessee, regardless of mileage, has paid roughly $26,000 to $30,000 in lease payments over those same 4 years. They are paying essentially exactly the depreciation curve. They are paying for the loss. Meanwhile, a 6-year-old version of that same SUV, already past the steepest depreciation, costs roughly $18,000 to buy outright. Drive it for the next 10 years. Expect to spend roughly $4,000 to $8,000 in repairs across that decade. Timing belt, brakes, suspension components, an alternator, normal stuff. And the total cost of ownership over those 10 years is approximately $22,000 to $26,000. Compare that to 10 years of leasing at an average of $560 a month. $67,200 in payments alone, plus another $8,000 to $12,000 in fees, insurance differentials, and lifestyle calibration drag. The maintenance savings of the lease are real. They're just dwarfed, by a factor of 3, by the depreciation surcharge you're paying to access them. You are not paying for convenience, you are paying for the privilege of paying. Now the fourth mechanism, and this one is the subtlest. The lease conceals a preference that, if forced into the open, most people would reject. The preference is, I want to drive a car I cannot afford to own. Here's what that means. If Anthony walked into a dealership and was told the only option available was to buy the car outright with a 5-year auto loan, he would not be driving the German performance SUV. He would walk past it, glance, do the mental math on a $1,250 a month payment with 5 years of commitment, and walk to the next aisle. He'd end up in a $32,000 mid-tier SUV instead of a $70,000 luxury one. The car he can buy is a different car than the car he can lease. This is the most important thing the lease does. It severs the relationship between what you can afford to own and what you can afford to drive. And because the lease payment is monthly and the term is short, it triggers a different mental category than a purchase does. Anthony's brain treats $760 a month as a recurring expense, like a gym membership or a cable bill. His brain would treat the $70,000 sticker price as a major purchase decision requiring real consideration. It is, of course, the same money. $760 a month for 36 months is $27,360, and he'll owe a similar amount again the next 36 months, and the next 36 months, and the next. Over a 40-year leasing career, he will, in fact, pay for the German SUV many times over without ever owning it. But the lease structure hides this from him. He never sees the lifetime total. He only ever sees this month's payment. And the deepest version of this trap, the one I want you to internalize, is that this isn't a bug in the leasing industry. This is the product. The product is the disconnection between the car you drive and the car you can afford to own. Every monthly payment is a subscription fee on that disconnection. Now let me make the compound cost unavoidable, because I don't want this video to leave you with abstractions. 2 people, both 25 years old, both earning $65,000 at the start of their careers, both planning to work until 65. Person A is Anthony's path. Leases continuously from 25 to 65. Average lease payment, blended across 40 years, is approximately $620 a month. Total spent on lease payments, roughly $298,000. Add fees, insurance differentials, and calibration drag, and the total automotive expenditure is closer to $410,000. Total cars owned at 65, 0. Person B buys a $20,000 used car at 25, keeps it 10 years, replaces it with a $25,000 used car at 35, keeps that 10 years, replaces it with a $30,000 used car at 45, and keeps that one through retirement. Total spent on actually owning cars from 25 to 65, $75,000. They also pay lower insurance, no full coverage requirement on a paid-off vehicle, saving roughly $400 a year or $16,000 over the 40 years. Total automotive expenditure, $59,000. The difference between the two paths, $351,000 in direct expenditure, but here's the part that destroys you when you actually see it. If person B invests the monthly difference, about $730 a month on average, across the 40 years, at a 7% average annual return, the compounded value of that difference at age 65 is approximately $1.92 million. That's not a typo. That is the lifetime compound cost of being on the conveyor belt versus walking next to it. $1.92 million is a different retirement. It is the difference between retiring at 65 with $400,000 and a stressed out spreadsheet, and retiring at 65 with $2.3 million and the freedom to do almost anything. The car decision, over 40 years, is the biggest single non-housing financial decision most Americans make, and almost nobody computes it that way. These are not extreme assumptions. The 7% return is below the historical S&P 500 average. The $730 monthly difference is conservative for the lease versus used car gap. The 40-year horizon is just a working career. This is the real math. Now here's what you actually do with all of this. 3 things. Specific. First, Calculate your true automotive cost over the next 40 years, not over the next 3. Take your current monthly auto payment, including insurance, and project it forward at the current rate. If you're on the conveyor belt and plan to stay on, multiply your payment by 480, 40 years times 12 months. That's your direct cost. Then run the alternative, the cost of buying a reliable used car every 10 years for the same period, and subtract. The number you get is what staying on the belt costs you in pure dollars, before opportunity cost. Then multiply that gap by 5 if you're going to invest the difference. That's the opportunity cost. Add the two numbers together. That's your lifetime cost. Most people who do this exercise honestly are stunned by the answer. The answer is usually somewhere between $400,000 and $1.5 million, depending on income and current habits. Second, apply the 10-year test before any car decision. Ask yourself, would I be comfortable owning this exact car, no upgrades, for the next 10 years? If the answer is no, the car is wrong for you. Not wrong morally, wrong financially. The 10-year test forces you to confront the actual ownership decision instead of the rental decision. A car you'd happily own for 10 years is, by definition, a car you can afford. A car you'd only want to lease for 3 years is, by definition, a car you cannot afford and are using the lease structure to access anyway. The 10-year test cuts through the lifestyle calibration trick by forcing your brain to evaluate the actual asset, not the monthly fee for access to it. Third, if you're currently on the belt, step off at the next natural exit. Your current lease ends in 14 months, 22 months, whatever. Do not sign another one. Buy a 4 to 6-year-old reliable used car outright or with a short-term loan. Yes, it will be a step down, invisible status. Yes, your neighbors will not be impressed. The neighbors are not going to fund your retirement. The neighbors are not going to drive you to your doctor's appointments at 76. The neighbors are not the people whose opinions you should be calibrating to when you're making a $1 million lifetime decision. The peer pressure of the leased car is the most expensive social tax in modern American life, and the only way out is to pay it once, when you step off the belt and then never pay it again. Now let me close where I started. Anthony is 42. He's been on the belt for 17 years. He has 23 working years left. The math on his current trajectory says he'll arrive at 65, having paid roughly $740,000 to the leasing industry, with nothing to show for it except a series of fading memories of cars that were never his. He has 14 months left on his current lease. The decision he makes in month 13 of that lease, whether to sign another one or step off, is, in real dollar terms, worth more to his retirement than every 401k contribution he will make for the rest of his career. That is the size of this decision. People who arrive at 65 with real retirement options are not the people who drove the nicest cars between 30 and 50. They are the people who drove modest cars between 30 and 50, and let the difference compound for 30 years in a low-cost index fund. The math is mechanical. The math is not impressed by your driveway. The conveyor belt only stops when you step off it. It will not slow down. It will not announce that this is your last chance. It will just keep moving, 3 years at a time, until you are 65 and you finally look down at what it cost you and you cannot get back on time and rerun the decision. Step off the belt. I'll see you in the next one.